Veronica presents the AI Repertory Theatre's production of New World Papers. Book 1, The Historian's Tale, by K.B. Shaw. Chapter 17. Topside.
I was looking straight up a musty-smelling 165-meter-high tube, only big enough around to spread my elbows 20 or 25 centimeters to each side. As I moved, I heard something crunch beneath my feet. I looked down and found the floor of the tube littered with the fine skeletons of Skriel. I took a deep breath, grabbed a rung, and started the climb. Time alone to think isn't a good thing when all you think about is what could go wrong. What if the topside hatch won't open? What if I can't find Franklin the barrister, or I get caught? What would the council do to me? Kill me? Disappear me upland? What if I get to the chancellor and he refuses to present our proposal to the council? What if they do accept? Will they honor our agreement? What if... Snap! Screech! One side of the metal rung I had grabbed broke and twisted downward. My feet were secure, but I lost my grip and started to fall backward. My spine slammed against the tube wall, sending a sharp pain through my body. My backside slid down the tube until I was wedged in a crouching position. When I pushed with my legs, it only drove me into the wall. What if I die here? I reached out, trying to grab a rung, but my fingers only grazed the surface. I thrust forward on the second try, but I still couldn't gain purchase. If only my arms were a few centimeters longer. I remained wedged for some time before I struck upon the idea of trying to use my shoulder blades to crawl my back up the wall. That didn't work. I need a hook. A hook. What can I use as a... I finally paid attention to the pain in my gut. I took off my gloves, shoved them in a coat pocket, then struggled to open the coat enough to retrieve the pistol, which was in my waistband, jammed between my leg and my stomach. Squirming and twisting, I worked it free. I held the pistol by the barrel, hoping to hook the handle over a rung. I reached out and found myself staring down the barrel of a loaded pistol. I didn't need experience with guns to know that was not a good thing. Very carefully, I pulled the gun back, ejected the magazine, and secured it in a buttoned shirt pocket. Had I put a bullet in the chamber like the manual said? I pulled back the slide and a casing ejected, striking the wall and clattering down the tube. I closed my eyes, hoping it wouldn't go off. I'm not sure how closing my eyes would protect me, but the brain isn't always logical when one's life is at stake. I heard the bullet strike the floor and rattle around a bit before settling down. Whew! I took a deep breath before reaching out again. I had to hook the pistol at the center of the rung to have enough depth to fit the grip between the rung and the tube wall. Once the gun was centered behind the rung, I shifted it toward the edge so it snugged tightly in place. I was then able to use the barrel as a handle of sorts and push myself up enough so I could bend forward and grab the next rung with my free hand. As soon as I had a secure grip again, I moved my feet down 2 rungs so I could stand comfortably and assess my situation. The static lights were growing dim. Soon, I would be in total darkness. I figured I had another 20 meters to climb, so I had to move quickly. I unwedged the pistol and tucked it into my coat pocket, retrieved my gloves, and began to climb. When I came to the broken rung, I pulled on the remains that had swiveled downward. It seemed secure enough to support me as I stretched for the next rung up. I tested that rung before moving upward. It was a balance between safety and speed. Finally, I saw a cavern above me, and my intensity surged. 5 rungs to go. 4, 3, 2, 1. I pulled myself over the lip of the tube. Then I lay panting on the wet, uneven stone surface. In the dim light, I saw the topside static box mounted on the wall of the small cave. I crawled to it, got up on my knees, and cranked the lights. I sat with my back against the damp wall and rested. I missed Addie, but I was glad she was safe in the quarters. After a brief rest, I got to my feet and searched for a hatch. There was none, only a small burrow halfway up the wall, big enough for me to belly crawl through. A trace of water trickled through it. I had no choice, so I shimmied in and moved forward and slightly upward, inch by inch. Luckily, the burrow didn't get any narrower, and it was only 5 or 6 meters long. My coat and pants were soaked by the time I emerged at floor level in a larger cave. A few thin rays of light filtered through a tangle of branches and bare vines that covered its mouth. A chilly breeze flowed in, which meant the cave was ventilated. I went to the mouth and peered out. The cave opened onto the bank of a small river, the Little Silver, Captain Majinski had said. The trees of the rim forest grew thickly all around. I knew that I must be mere meters from the edge of the rim and at least 2 kilometers from the eastern limits of Primachita. I forced my way through the bramble and looked up at the sky. It had clouded over and threatened to snow or possibly rain. It would do no good to be found coming out of the rim forest, which is forbidden to enter, so I decided to hole up in the cave until nightfall. Snow covered the ground in shallow patches. I might have to meander a bit, but I wouldn't have to worry about leaving an easily followed trail through the snow. Then it struck me. How would I find my way back? I had only one option: follow the river on my return. I searched the floor and found what I was hoping for: evidence of a fire pit. Then I set about finding wood. I would get warm, dry off, sleep a bit if I could, and set out after dark. There was a light dusting of snow on the forest floor when I woke. That was bad news, since it meant that I would leave an easily discernible trail through the pine forest. I was still able to find bare patches here and there and detoured through them whenever possible. It was after midnight when I reached the edge of the rim forest. I crouched down in the undergrowth some 10 meters from the edge. As expected, there were no buildings nearby. I had studied the map of Prima Città before I left the quarters, so I knew I would probably exit the forest near the North Promenade. In the old Città, the wealthy family manors backed up to the forest. In the newer areas, a long open park area, the Promenade, served as an additional buffer between the city and the rim. Just beyond would be a commercial district comprised of franchise warehouses, offices, and distribution centers. I faced a problem. Several inches of snow still blanketed the open expanse of the park, and there was very little cover to shield me from prying eyes. Retreating several meters into the forest, I decided to angle back toward the Little Silver so I could use it to traverse the promenade without being seen or leaving tracks. The river was narrow, shallow, and free of ice. Its steep banks would provide cover if I crouched. If I walked along the very edge of the water, only the soles of my boots would get wet. I proceeded upstream, stopping briefly at the edge of the forest. I listened for movement. All was quiet. I moved slowly into the park, halting every couple of minutes to listen. There was a footbridge ahead. I stopped, listened. Footsteps. I dashed for cover under the bridge. A patrol? The steps drew nearer. Instead of crossing the bridge, they were coming down the riverbank. I skulked deeper under the stone archway of the bridge and watched. I saw movement, so I held my breath and tried not to make a sound. A head appeared and dipped toward the flowing of water. It was a buck, a magnificent animal with a 12-point rack. He was joined by 2 does. The buck suddenly lifted his head, looked in my direction, sniffed, and then led the does up the far bank. My slog across the park continued without incident after that. A gaslit road ran along the verge of the park, with blocks of buildings just across the street. The river bisected the district, with walkways running along both sides. The lights from a succession of bridges receded into the distance. Bedford had told me that this part of the Città never slept, except during the high conjunction. Now that the snows were melting, businesses were reopening and people were moving about on foot and rolling along on carts and wagons. I passed under the first bridge and came up on the right-hand walkway. The smell of fresh baked goods and coffee lured me up the street to a cafe. I was supplied with money. Not a lot, but more than I had ever had, so I went in and ordered 2 sticky buns and a cup of coffee. The cafe was abuzz with talk about the fire at the Greer Manor. I became anxious, but no one paid attention to me. I was just another bloke, so I took a seat in a corner and listened to what was being said.
Sad news about the Greer place.
One of the original manors, wasn't it?
I think that's true.
Things like that happen if you build a bonfire too close to the house, though, don't they? The roof caught fire. Eventually, the gas main exploded.
10 dead, including the old missus and her granddaughter.
My curiosity was piqued. Instead of going to see the barrister straight off, I decided to walk south toward the old Città. I wanted to see the manor from Topside. Solman was peeking above the tree line, and Solmage was just rising when I reached the Greer estate. A crowd of people were milling around the stone arch, held back by several men wearing green jackets and peaked hats. My memory of my arrival told me that there was nothing to see from the road. The manor was set behind a screen of trees. If it weren't for the arch, you'd think you were looking at the rim forest proper. I melded into the crowd with hopes of gathering more information.
I heard the council's going to raise the ruins and fill in the hole,
Said one man.
bodies and all.
Let the forest reclaim the land,
Said his female companion.
Not true.
Whispered a wizened old lady.
I have it on good authority that the Chancellor is laying claim to the estate.
How so?
Asked the man.
The young girl was his granddaughter, Didn't you know?
The man's companion shook her head and clucked.
That's so.
Indeed it is. Come spring, he's going to excavate, recover the bodies, and rebuild from the basement up.
There won't be any bodies to find. Will excavating the ruins reveal the passage to the below and the quarters? Maybe I should abandon the plan and head back right now. As I wound my way toward the arch, I noticed two dark men on the inside, examining the crowd. I pulled up my coat collar as if fending off the morning chill and headed out of the crowd. I started down a street that would lead me toward the heart of the Sita and a meeting with the barrister. I heard footsteps behind me. I resisted the urge to speed up. Stay calm. Remember the deer in the park. This is probably just someone walking to work or home or someplace. The footsteps drew nearer. I willed myself to stay calm. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my shoulder.
Fallon,
Came a hushed male voice. I turned to confront the man.
it is you.
Said the man when he saw my face. I knew the heavy, high-collared black frock coat, the slick gray hair hanging out from a black wool cap, and the pince-nez perched on a sharp nose. It was Dean Ambrose. He pulled me down a narrow, walled alleyway.
I came to see Mrs. Greer the moment the roads were passable. I wanted to to tell her what happened, but she's dead.
He glanced down the alleyway in nervous, bird-like head moves.
She's dead!
When Ambrose first recognized me, I feared that he worked for the council. But he was just a low-life Skriel trader of information. That's what he was doing in the Great Room the night McCrae was killed. He had disappeared shortly afterward. I wondered to whom he sold the information. Tell Mrs. Greer what?
Say, weren't you in the house when it burned?
Assuming my old manners from the Mount, I looked him in the eyes and lied. The missus wanted me to train as her personal baker. She set me up as an apprentice, sir, in a shop in the warehouse district. The baker turned me out when he heard of the fire. "Who's to pay for your apprenticeship, for your room and board?" he says. "I'll be glad to be rid of your smart mouth," he says. I pulled my best look of contrition and said, "I wish I had taken your words to heart, sir. I fear I'll not amount to anything in this Sita."
Quite right. Quite right. You praise below that you found some humility, young man,
said Ambrose, regaining his composure and sense of superiority. I started to walk him farther into the alleyway, away from prying eyes. "Why were you looking for the missus, sir?"
I had some information for her, but it's probably too late, even if she were alive.
Too late for what?
To save Missy Howard.
What?
It's of no matter to you.
I grabbed him by the lapels of his coat and slammed him against the alley wall. I heard the air expel from his lungs. His hat slid forward over his face. I flung it down the alleyway and shed my servant boy demeanor. "It matters a great deal to me. What happened to Jenna?"
They came and took her.
"Who?" I shook him as if it would loosen him up. "Who took her?" There was fear in his eyes.
The council, I think.
"When? Why? Where?" It felt as if my heart would pound a hole in my chest. I was sick to my stomach. He stammered. "When did this happen?"
The day after you left.
"Why'd they take her?"
I wasn't in Hunninger's office, so I don't know.
I pulled him away from the wall, then slammed him back. His skull clunked against the brick. "I know you, Skriel!" "You were probably in the servants' passage eavesdropping." I shook him again. "Why'd they take her?"
Because they knew she was part of the movement, that she was working for the old lady,
he said sharply. Suddenly, he thrust his right hand in his coat pocket and pulled out a whistle. Before I could react, he blew it, loudly. I threw Ambrose to the ground, and the whistle skittered across the pavement. It was then that I heard the dark men coming from both ends of the alleyway.
They knew,
Spat Ambrose.
because I told them.
The dark men were on me. They forced me to my knees, pulled a bag over my head, and cinched the drawstring around my neck. I remembered McCrae's bloodied face and braced myself for a beating. It never came.
End of chapter 17. Next up, Brennan.